Welcome to the Rime Buddhist Center's Dharma Talk podcast, Achieving Peace Through Compassion. This podcast is a recording of the Dharma Talks given during our Sunday service. This talk was given by Lama Matthew Palden Gocha.
So today's talk is called The Still Heart of Contentment. This teaching comes from a very down-to-earth section of Nagarjuna's letter to a friend. One of our classes, Introduction to the Mahayana, have been studying this text, and I like to think of it inspiring this talk. I want to talk about some of the verses. These are around 22 to 39. I'm not going to cover every single verse, but I wanted to go through many of them. And even though it was written almost 2,000 years ago, its wisdom lands right in the middle of the pressures and distractions that we face today. As I read through some of these verses, you're going to hear some strong imagery. We're going to have some clear guidance and practical advice. But the central message is very, very gentle. When we cultivate contentment, the heart becomes still. And when the heart becomes still, wisdom becomes possible. So let's explore that together. Let's listen to the first few verses from this. So verse 22, Nagarjuna says, "Guard this fickle mind as you would do your learning, children, treasure, or your life. Renounce all sensual pleasures as if it were a viper, poison, weapon, foe, or fire." Verse 23 says, "The pleasures we desire will bring us ruin. They're like the kimba fruit," the Buddha said. "Eschew them. It's the chains that tightly bind the worldly in samsara's prison house." And 24, "Of he whose fickle senses are controlled, these six that never cease to dart at things, and he who's fought and conquered many foes, the first is truly brave, the wise have said." So why is it that we are so restless? We had 3 meditation sessions. We were very restless through most of them. I know, I'm sitting here watching you all fidget and wiggle. That's okay, I was fidgeting and wiggling too. But Nagarjuna begins to remind us that our mind is fickle. It darts, it grabs, it resists. And the commentary says the mind does not stay still for even a single second. Even in ancient India, without our cell phones, without all the notifications, without all the streaming services, people struggled with distraction and overstimulation. And so Nagarjuna names this truth. Discontent comes from the world. It comes from our reality, our reactivity to the world. We see something pleasant, we chase it. We hear something unpleasant, we recoil. We gain and our hearts are lifted. We lose and our hearts collapse. We're sitting here in our meditation room and we see movement outside and our eyes immediately go to that distraction. And this constant push and pull, the grasping and resisting, keeps the heart agitated. It never rests long enough to discover the stillness beneath it all. And the world isn't the problem. Our chasing and resisting are. Nagarjuna speaks about sense discipline, not to shame or suppress us, but to help us see clearly how we get hooked. He reminds the king who he wrote this letter to that appearances can intoxicate us, that we can get swept away by sights, sounds, tastes, and fantasies. And then he says, the real hero is not the warrior who conquers an army, but the one who conquers their own senses. The real hero is the one who is focused on themselves, because conquering others changes the world for a moment, but conquering our reactivity changes our life. Nagarjuna uses these vivid images. Pleasures that are like fruit that look beautiful but make us sick. Craving is like a person with leprosy, warming themselves by a fire, brief comfort but no relief. And sense pleasures soothe for a moment, then demands more. If we rely on pleasures to make us whole, we will always be hungry. Contentment can't be found outside of ourselves. It must be cultivated from within. Nagarjuna goes on. He gives one of the most important teachings in Buddhism, and that's the 8 worldly concerns. In verse 29, he says, "You who know the world take gain and loss, or bliss and pain, or kind words and abuse, or praise and blame. These 8 mundane concerns, make them the same and don't disturb your mind." So we have gain and loss, pleasure and pain, praise and blame, fame and disrepute. right? So 4, but they're binaries, which give us the 8. And these winds blow through everyone's life constantly. They push us, they pull us, and they keep us spinning. And Nagarjuna's advice is stunningly simple. Make them the same. Don't let them disturb your mind. This doesn't mean that we don't feel life. It means that we don't allow our life to drag us. It's important to understand your worth is not created by praise. Your dignity is not destroyed by criticism. And your happiness does not depend on what you gain. And your suffering is not guaranteed by what you lose. And when we stop letting these winds govern our hearts, we begin to taste that stillness. So why do negative actions disturb our heart? And so Nagarjuna gives us 2 more verses. In verse 30, he says, perform no evil, even for the sake of Brahmins, bhikshus, gods, or honored guests, your father, mother, queen, or for your court. The ripened fruit is hell's for your alone. And then 31, he says, although performing wrong and evil deeds does not at once like swords create a gash, when death arrives, those evil acts will show their karmic fruit will clearly be revealed. All right. So in these 2 verses, Nagarjuna is telling the king, don't commit harmful actions, even for noble reasons. Their consequences belong to you alone, and karma doesn't ripen immediately, but it does ripen. Think about that first one. Don't commit harmful actions, not even for noble reasons. How often do we think, oh, I feel justified in my anger and in my action towards others because I am in the right and the world, is in the wrong. This is compassion in his teaching. He acknowledges that negative actions don't feel painful when we commit them. No instant punishment, no flashing red lights, but harmful actions leave residues on our mind. Fear, guilt, confusion, even agitation. And these residues disturb the heart. And a disturbed heart cannot be still. So, what's the alternative? Well, Nagarjuna offers a new kind of wealth that we should try to collect. So in verse 32, he says, faith and ethics, learning, bounteousness, a flawless sense of shame and decency, and wisdom are the 7 riches Buddhists taught. No other common riches have no worth. So here he lists 7 noble riches: confidence, ethics, learning, generosity, self-respect, respect for others, and then wisdom. So these are the treasures that make our life meaningful, treasures that no one can steal and no misfortune can destroy. These enrich our heart, they stabilize our mind, and together they form a foundation of a still heart of contentment. So let's touch on a few of them. The first noble treasure is confidence or faith, not a blind belief, but a deeply rooted trust. We trust in the path. We trust in our own capacity to awaken. And when confidence is strong, the mind knows where to rest. The second virtue, ethical conduct, it's not moralism, it's not rigidity, but it's the simple, liberating power of choosing not to harm. When our actions are wholesome, the heart is unburdened. A still heart is almost impossible without virtue, because virtue is the foundation of peace. And then there's learning and generosity. When we learn the Dharma, so it shapes how we see the world. And when we practice generosity, the joy of letting go, which dissolves this illusion of scarcity and wanting more. And dissolving this illusion, it's the very essence of contentment. And then the other one I wanted to mention finally is this treasure of wisdom. Wisdom sees clearly. Everything is impermanent, interconnected, empty of separate self. A heart that sees clearly rests easily. And wisdom is the treasure that brings the heart home. So with these 7 treasures, when they're cultivated, something shifts. Something begins to happen inside of us. Our mind grows lighter, our heart grows quieter, and the storm of the world calms down. We stop chasing after approval, we stop clinging to pleasures, and we stop fearing loss. And we discover that contentment is not created by the world, it's cultivated within the heart. And these treasures don't add noise to our life, they remove the noise. They reveal the stillness that has always been there. The still heart of contentment isn't something that we manufacture. It's something that we uncover by nourishing ourselves with these 7 noble riches. So let's just take a breath right here. Allow that these noble treasures settle in our heart. because each one is a jewel, each one's a protection, and each one is a path back to stillness. And that's the wealth that Nagarjuna praises. And this is the wealth that sustains a life of deep contentment. But next comes the shining line that gives the talk this title. In verse 34, Nagarjuna says, "Of all great wealth, contentment is supreme. Said he who taught and guided gods and men. So always be content. If you know this, you have no wealth. True riches you'll have found." Contentment is the deeply spiritual recognition that this moment is enough, what I have is enough, and who I am is enough. And when these conditions are difficult, sometimes something inside, though, remains the same. This isn't a passivity. It's not a resignation. Contentment is inner freedom. Nagarjuna gives kind of a humorous image. He says, the more heads a Naga lord has, the more headaches they suffer. I always think that's funny. The more we accumulate, the more we worry. But the one who is content, even with little, has the greatest wealth of all. There's do most everyone know George Carlin, the comedian back in the day? He has this skit that he does where he talks about, we need more stuff. And the more stuff we collect, we need a place for that stuff. And then all of a sudden, we have so much stuff, we got to find other places. So then I leave some of my stuff at your place, or I have to get another place to leave all my stuff. And that's kind of the way it is if we don't have contentment. We're constantly collecting. We're constantly, reaching out and needing more. Unfortunately, that's what the advertisers want us to do, though. You have the such and such phone 12, but now such and such phone 13 comes out, and you got to have it, even though there's nothing wrong with your phone 12. And most of the time, by the time you get phone 13, you realize there wasn't really much difference between 13 and 12. And then you feel distraught. I just wasted all that money. Well, Nagarjuna gets very practical in these verses, and he shifts to the daily behaviors that support a stable mind. He's speaking about relationships, food, even sleep. And these may seem ordinary, but they profoundly influence whether our hearts become turbulent or calm. And so let's walk through each of these verses. So verse 36 is all about choosing relationships wisely. He says, and again, he's speaking to the king. So he says, a murderess who sides with enemies, a queen who holds her husband in contempt, a thieving wife who steals the smallest thing, these three kinds of wife you must avoid. So he's saying here, avoid relationships that undermine your well-being. Avoid relationships that build on contempt, hostility, or dishonesty. And avoid companionship that destabilizes your ethics and mental clarity. In simple terms, be careful who you allow close to your heart. The people we partner with shape our emotional world, our behavior, and even the quality of our meditation. Relationships rooted in aggression or deception create inner turbulence, and turbulence obstructs the stillness. So now, what are the qualities that we're looking for in a relationship? And he says in verse 37, a wife who's like a sister follows you, affectionate like a true and loving friend, supportive like a mother, obedient like a maid. She must be honored like a family god. Again, symbolic language. Nagarjuna is listening for archetypes representing the qualities we're looking for, like a sibling, with someone who has mutual respect. So mutual respect, a chosen family, thank you. Like a friend, someone who's warm and trusting. And like a parent, someone who supports and cares for us. And like a cooperative partner, willingness to work together. These metaphors describe a relationship built on kindness, respect, affection, and harmony. And such a partner, Nagarjuna says, should be honored like a family god, because good relationships protect the mind. They soothe rather than agitate. They support practice and ethical living. So you can sum up these two verses like this. Seek relationships that help your practice and avoid relationships that derail it. Now in verse 38, he starts talking about food. And he says, take food as medicine in the right amount, without attachment, without hatefulness. Don't eat for vanity, for pride, or ego's sake. Eat only for your body's sustenance. And this is one of the most beautiful verses in the letter, because the Buddha instructs monastics to reflect, I take this food not for indulgence, not for pride, but to sustain this body so that I may continue the path. And Nagarjuna echoes this. Don't eat with attachment, overeating, obsession, emotional eating. Don't eat with aversion, punishing diets, shame, harshness towards the body, but eat in the right amount, like you're taking medicine. Food becomes a support for clarity, not for an arena for craving. In our modern age of comfort eating, diet culture, body anxiety, this middle way is deeply healing. And then finally, my favorite, sleep. So he says in verse 39, knowledgeable one, recite all day and in the first and last watch of the night. Then in between these two, sleep mindfully so that your slumbers are not spent in vain. Here Nagarjuna invites us to treat sleep as part of the path, not as something that interrupts our practice, but something that supports it. He describes the night in watches, even evening practice, sleep, and then early morning practice. The instruction is simple. Go to sleep with a wholesome intention and wake up with a wholesome intention. Let mindfulness bookend your rest. Let sleep nourish clarity, not dull it. He's not saying sleep less. He's saying sleep consciously. Sleep can support mindfulness or reinforce confusion. And even one mindful breath before sleep can change the quality of rest and the quality of our awakened mind. If we gather together Nagarjuna's guidance from these verses, the path becomes beautifully clear. Guard the senses, release the 8 worldly concerns, cultivate true spiritual wealth, and live with simplicity. Every one of these steps softens our grasping. Every one of them brings the heart closer to ease, and every one of them leads towards the still heart. The heart that is not dragged by the winds, the heart that is not shaken by pleasures or pain, and a heart that rests in its own completeness. So let's just take a moment together. You can close your eyes if you wish, but just take one gentle breath and let the breath settle naturally. There's no need to reach for anything, no need to push away anything, but just rest in the simplicity of being right here and right now. And let this moment be enough. Let your breath be enough. And let yourself be enough. This is contentment. Not the contentment of resignation, the contentment of freedom. May we each cultivate this still heart. May we carry it into our lives, our relationships, and our practice. And may this contentment open into wisdom and compassion for all beings. I hope that this talk has been beneficial to you. This week, may you have compassion, wisdom, gratefulness, and joy.
Thank you for listening to the Rime Buddhist Center's Dharma Talk podcast. Music was provided by Barefoot Bran Music. Please consider supporting the Rime Buddhist Center by making a donation at our website at www.rimecenter.org/donate.